Thank you. Good evening. I call this meeting to order. Today we have one item on the agenda, and it's budget presentation and council deliberations. I would like to welcome our AST administrator, Jan Hahn.
Thank you. Good evening, Council President Perez and members of the council. Please bear with me while I share my screen. Okay. Are you seeing the presentation?
Yes, but yeah. it's not in there. It is. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Just took me another click away. Yep. Tonight we continue with the department budget presentations. We only have two departments remaining: Human Resources and Risk Management, and then Court. So with that, I will turn it over to Ellen Bradley Mock, our HRRM Administrator.
Good evening, everyone. As Jan mentioned, my name is Ellen Bradley Mock, and I serve as your HR and Risk Management Administrator. The details of my department budget can be found on pages 3-81 to 89. Before I read the mission statement, I do want to call your attention that almost every single thing we do in Human Resources and Risk Management supports the business plan goal number 4, building an inclusive, informed city with equitable outcomes for all, in support of social, economic, and racial justice. In the Human Resources and Risk Management Department, we work collaboratively and in partnership with administrators in the other departments and their teams, with individual employees and groups, and with employee representatives and the community to provide programs and services that create a positive, inclusive, and productive work environment that empowers all employees to serve the needs of our residents. Next slide. As you can see from looking at the org chart, we are a small department of 13 FTEs. Actually, one FTE under the Administrative Support Division is actually our supported employment employee who reports to Jason Seth in the City Clerk's office. Jan Hahn mentioned him last week when she was doing her budget presentation. We also are responsible for overseeing all of the employee training and development in terms of citywide trainings. Under my purview, we have 3 divisions: Employee Relations, managed by Kim Gilman; our Benefits Division, managed by Wendy Ritterizer; and our Risk Management Division, managed by Kelsey Turnins. Next slide. As you can see from looking at this picture, we are all 100% under internal support services. The highlights of our budget, and I'll just name some of them: our regular salaries increased by $60,742 in 2021 due to reclassifications of various positions after the 2019 and 2020 budget was adopted. Because of medical, dental claims and premium increases, our personnel benefits will increase by $1.2 million in 2022. Other services and charges will increase by nearly $25,000 and $36,000 in 21 and 22 respectively, mostly due to increase in broker fees. And our interfund payments will increase in 2021 by $35,648 due to increases in payments for IT, facilities, and indirect costs. Next slide. Our performance metrics fall under 3 main categories: highly qualified, healthy, well-trained, and productive workforce, functional work environment, and safeguard public interest in the assets. For our 2019 results, and we're still calculating, of course, the 2020, we provided 8 trainings citywide to city personnel in support of that goal. We had 93% retention for employees who were either promoted or newly hired during their probationary period. And we reduced the number of days from recruit to fill from 67 in 2018 to 55 in 2019. With the exception of the airport being inspected, we did inspect all facilities, which is why you see that it's 87% versus the 100% that we were able to achieve in 2018. And lastly, We reduced, or there was a reduction in worker compensation claims from 55 in 2018 to 42 in 2019. And we attribute this to an increased positive leadership for the safety committee and the commitment those safety committee members have made to the overall safety of our city through their work on the safety committee. Next slide. Our three divisions have been very busy, and I'll begin by talking about the Employee Relations Division. As I mentioned before, this division is managed by Kim Gilman, our HR labor manager, and she has three senior analysts working under her, Brian Sandler, Jana Dinkelspiel, and Amanda Rhines. Together, they implemented action steps that were laid out in the 2017 HR Inclusion Tactical Plan and made progress towards hiring a more diverse workforce in terms of gender and racial ethnicity. You heard the results of this study when Preeti gave her budget presentation. I think she was the very first budget presentation under the executive office. They reviewed and revised personnel policies and job descriptions, as well as created new policies to adapt to changing times. We provided, under the leadership of Jana Dinkelspiel, success signals trainings to teams citywide to enhance communication skills. And at the helm with Brian Sandler, developed a supported employment program and made our first hire in August 2019. That was due to the partnership of administrative services, public works, and community and economic development. We completed a market study of benchmarked non-represented wages and benefits in 2020 and implemented new technologies to streamline our HR operations and enhance the onboarding experience with the online systems. And we also have just recently implemented a new performance evaluation system called NeoGov Perform. Next slide. Wendy Ritterreiser is our benefits manager. Working for Wendy is Carolyn Kraft and Maria Sahagan, both senior analysts, and Betsy Bailey, who is our HR specialist. Together, they conducted an RFP and replaced the city's longtime broker for health insurance plans. They hired a new senior benefits analyst to replace a retiring employee, reviewed and updated the city's leave policies, replacing 7 policies with one new comprehensive policy, and conducted training and provided information to employees. They implemented the state's new paid family leave program, including updating the city's leave policies, working with our partners in payroll to make necessary updates, and providing training for supervisors and employees. Wendy developed retirement planning workshops for LEF and PERS and conducted 9 workshops with 107 total participants attending. And I can tell you some of the personal testimonies that have been shared with me are that the employees thought they could never have retired or their retirement plans will be moved up as a result of Wendy's great training. So we're really grateful for that. They completed an audit of benefits enrollment and files, addressed discrepancies or missing documents, and there were some. And based on COVID-19, amended benefits plans to cover testing and treatment at no cost without prior approval, updated eligibility rules during COVID-related leave, implemented a 1-month health plan rate holiday as a cost-saving measure, and implemented a voluntary separation incentive program. Next slide. They were just as busy in risk management under the leadership of Kelsey Turnez and her risk management analyst, Krista Kolaz. Together, they subrogated and collected over $93,000 in funds owed the city by third parties, and there's an additional $40,000 pending receipt. They adjusted a total of 109 claims during this period, 90 of which were handled in-house by risk management. And every time they are handled in-house, that saves the city money. Continually reviewing, updating, or creating safety and risk management policies, most recently to include driver's eligibility, claim settlement authority, and the hearing conservation policy. They expect reductions in vehicle accidents through implementation of an online employee driver's training, some of which was able to be done while we were in the very first stages of our COVID telework program. It gave the employees some things to take care of online. In response to the employees' ask, provided 3 de-escalation training sessions conducted by Crisis Connections with a total of 51 employees participating. This training was specifically targeted towards employees who work customer service counters. There was a seamless transition of the department with 2 outstanding hires. One, Krista Colaz, as I mentioned before, as the risk analyst, and then the promotion of Kelsey Turnez from risk analyst to risk manager. They assisted in the cyber incident response to include the purchase of cyber insurance and excess cyber insurance, the hire of Baker Hostetler Law, Moxfire, Coveware, and Kroll Services in general support and coordination. And they also assisted in the handling of COVID response for the city, leading in safety and health support for employees to include the use of L&I regulations and public health guidelines to create procedures for symptoms, screenings, tracking, notifications, return to work, reopening of city hall plans, posters and signage, Renton 101 presentations, and reporting to King County Health when required by law, and general support of employees. There was a presentation given, as a matter of fact, today. Next slide, please. Employee relations initiatives, what will they be working on? They'll be working to negotiate successor union contracts with all 3 bargaining groups, continue to revise and create personnel policies and procedures and job descriptions to address and adapt to the changing needs of our workforce. Based on budget resources, revisit the findings of the market study of non-represented positions, explore and implement an electronic system for personnel files, eliminating the need for paper files, and continue to implement strategies as laid out in the 2020 HR, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Tactical Plan and measure progress. Next slide. In benefits, they'll be busy conducting a compliance audit of the self-funded insurance plans with the new broker and take any corrective action that is necessary. They'll continue to update and communicate procedures to support the post-COVID return to on-site work, including accommodating high-risk workers and those requiring leave for illness or childcare. And finally, review city policies related to benefits and update as needed. Next slide. In risk management, they'll continue to provide safety and risk management support to the City of Renton departments to proactively identify, assess, mitigate risks, and ultimately save the city from human and monetary asset losses, protect the city from catastrophic losses through the purchasing and managing of excess insurance through our city's property and liability insurance broker, Alliant, continue collecting funds owed the city from responsible third parties for damage to city property, and review and update safety and risk management related policies and procedures. Next slide. This is the group. These are the people that get the work done in human resources. On the left is a picture of us at the employee picnic that we weren't able to have this year. This was the 2019 picture. And on the left is our annual end of the year holiday and planning workshop that we have made an annual event of. That's my team. This is what we do. I couldn't be more grateful to have such a wonderful team to work with every single day. Now, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Ellen. I very much appreciate your presentation and all the work that you and your team have been doing during this year that I know has been very challenging, but really we were very ready to go and work online thanks to the work that you have done the year previously to this. Like you already knew something, I'm sure. You were so ready. With that, I open the floor for council members. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. I see none, but I do have a question. I know that if you can please bring this information next week, or if you can send an email, is what is roughly owed the city for damage that are uncollected? In your 2021-2022 goals, you say that you will continue collecting funds owed to the city from responsible third parties and damage to city property. Can I know what is roughly owed to the city?
Absolutely. We'll get that figure for you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. And can I clarify through today? I mean, that's kind of a moving target. Do you want to know just up date and time?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
Thank you. So I will be back to you, Jan.
Great, thank you. Our next presentation is by the court. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bonnie Woodrow.
I'll chime in, Bonnie. Thank you. First, I was hoping Ellen didn't leave so quickly, but maybe she's already gone. I want to share really quickly before I start the court's presentation, Ellen, if you're still there. I was one of the first COVID survivors in the city of Renton City Hall. I don't keep my secrets very secret, but I just want to share that I have been amazed and so impressed, and I never expected to get to know Kelsey through this experience. But I have family members who work for very, 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 very large, some of the largest corporations in Renton, that's all I shall say, that have not handled it the way that the city of Renton handled it. And I just wanted to say, Ellen, in front of this entire city council, that I felt like I was in such great hands. And so I have survived. I did well. I am now a COVID ambassador, but I just want to say thank you, because a lot of big companies have not gotten it right and have not handled it well. And I just wanted to say thank you. So if you're leaving now, goodbye, but I wanted to say that.
Thank you, Kara. I appreciate that.
With that, my name is Kara Murphy Richards. I am your newest judge in Renton. Because Bonnie and I come from the court, we are obviously big rule followers. And so when they told us we had 15 minutes, we sat down many times to decide how to be respectful of that time limit. So while I don't typically make notes for myself, I did that today to be respectful of the time limit. At a time where many people in the legal system and law enforcement are feeling discouraged and frightened and angry and helpless and confused, I don't think we've ever felt so hopeful in the court. We feel so sure about the opportunity that the court has to make a difference. And I know that I've never been so sure that in Renton we have a court that is committed to the safety of the community and necessary accountability. We have a court that is committed to rehabilitation and access to resources for those who need it. And we are committed to the ability to accomplish our goals in a way that is fiscally responsible. While it's imperative that the judicial branch of government maintain independence, I also think it has been and continues to be clear that the mission and objectives and goals of Renton Court align perfectly with the mission and objectives and goals of the city. So what is the court's mission, you ask? That would take us to slide 2. The mission of the Renton Municipal Court as an independent and impartial branch of government is to provide objective, accessible, and timely resolution of all cases appropriately coming before the court, the protection of the rights of all individuals, and the dignified and fair treatment of all parties. When I looked over the city's business plan, it was amazing how many of the phrases that we often use in court were parallel to the phrases used in the business plan. I can share that our court remains committed to meeting the needs of all people in our community, not just some. This means working to reduce and remove barriers that exist for many. And as stated in the city's business plan, we must improve access to services and eradicate disparities. Something as simple as providing bus tickets to someone without transportation, but mostly taking the time to really, really listen to a litigant who wants to share his story and his pain. And by listening, I mean actively listening. In hard dockets and full dockets and large volume dockets, it is sometimes very, very difficult to listen to the stories of each person who comes before the court, but it's imperative that we do that. We cannot assert that we are creating equity and equality when we do not listen and we do not understand. We were, as you know, scheduled to launch Community Court on September 1st of 2020. Countless hours went into committee meetings, site visits, vendor meetings, forum developments. We met with community court leaders from Olympia, Burien, Redmond, Spokane, and other jurisdictions. Don't peek at that yet. Don't peek at that slide yet. Close your eyes. We met with community court leaders from all over the state. And we learned to revise and revisit plans as needed, focusing on what was working and eliminating what was not working with other courts. While there were still a few details to be ironed out, we had begun planning community engagement meetings. It's one thing to have a really wonderful, amazing program in place, but before you launch something like Community Court, it's imperative that you get the engagement and support of the local community. I think when you start putting things together like criminal defendants and rehabilitation, or the court system and social work, you send people into a tizzy because they simply don't understand how those things can go together. And I can tell you that Bonnie and Judge Jurado and myself and all the members of the community court leadership team were completely committed to holding community engagement meetings throughout the summer to allow people from the community to come and to talk to those of us who were on the leadership team, to ask us questions, to express concerns, and just to give us the opportunity to assure people that the court was not getting out of the business of accountability, but participating in a way to hold people far more accountable in a way that made the community safer. The community engagement meetings were the only step that we had not gotten to when this pandemic hit. But I don't want anyone to think, I know in a few of the previous presentations, people have mentioned that the community court plans kind of got derailed, and I wanted to unmute myself and to scream from the mountain that was not correct. We did not get derailed. We were ready to launch, and we will be ready to launch. None of us could have prepared for the way that COVID-19 would change everything. Rather than launching a celebration of community court, we were making difficult furlough decisions. Rather than finalizing our vendor agreements, we were working tirelessly to move our entire court calendar to Zoom. I'm going to divert just for 1 second. For those of you who have counseled friends in other cities, do not let them convince you that any court moved their entire operations to Zoom before Renton did. It is not true. I've heard other courts take credit for moving all of their court cases to Zoom. I know who some of those people are who are talking, but fortunately, Bonnie and I recorded all of our court hearings, and I know which of those judges were watching us to try to figure out how to make it work. But we were, in fact, the first court in the state of Washington to move our entire court docket to Zoom and to hold all of our hearings virtually. So we were not only ahead of the curve, folks, we were ahead of the mountains, we were ahead of everything during a very, very difficult time. Instead of trying to set up chairs at community events to bring people together, we were trying to rearrange our office and the courtroom to adhere to social distancing and keep people apart because we were essential from the very beginning of COVID. And while our community court docket has not officially started, the way we handle our cases has already changed. As a team, the court and the attorneys have been more focused than ever on what we can do to reduce the likelihood that individuals will reoffend. We've been more focused than ever on how we can connect people with social services during this public health crisis in a meaningful way. We have been focused on how to remove barriers many people encounter as they endeavor to access these programs and services. At the heart of all we do every day is our commitment to justice. And I want to share something in just a moment. I just wanted to share something else. I think this came up last week, and this individual may not have known this either. Many of the social services in Renton and in the surrounding area have also moved to virtual service provision. And so I think there's a perception that we can't hook people into resources right now, but that's really no longer true. It took a little while for some of the treatment agencies to get virtual. Really, really difficult to take a UA over Zoom. For those of you who don't know what a UA is, it's a urine analysis, which allows us to confirm whether people have in their system things that aren't supposed to be there when they're going through their case. But those programs have figured out how to do their treatment programs virtually and to call people in individually for those types of things that can't be done virtually. So our ability to connect people to resources really isn't hindered as much as I think people think it is. And I'm feeling really optimistic about that. I am old. I may be one of the oldest people on the Zoom calendar. I know that my lampshade hat makes me look a lot younger than I am. But I have been to so many trainings about equality and equity and how the system can work together. And it wasn't until a few months ago that I saw a slide that really, really hit home for me. And I'm sure many of you have seen many slides and many trainings, but this is just slide number 3 that I didn't want you to peek at until just now. But the slide that I'm going to have Dan put up right now, if you haven't seen it before, I would really encourage you to take some time to look at it, because I think that other training have hit home one point or the other. But the point is, not only do we have to give people the same ability to reach and to access things, we have to have the same things available to everybody. It's one thing to say, I'm going to give a bus ticket to all 10 litigants who are standing before me. That means everything is equal. It does not mean everything's equal. It does not mean everything's equal. If I'm sending 10 people to Chaya, or I'm sending 10 people to consejo, or I'm sending 10 people to assessment and treatment associates, I am likely sending 6 of those people or 7 of those people to the treatment agency that's not right for them. So it's about having enough resources that meet the needs of everybody, and then about providing what we need to provide to people to get to those resources. So I just wanted all of you to be assured that the entire court, especially community court, but the entire court is in the hands of a staff who gets it, who really gets it. I would encourage any of you to stop by, stay 6 feet away from us, but I encourage you, any of you to stop by the court anytime that you want, if you want to see that we probably have one of the most enlightened, dedicated staffs to making this slide happen that I've ever worked with in my 54 years. And I'm really, really blessed about that and very thankful for that. And I don't think that's the case everywhere. So with that overall picture, I will turn things over to Ms. Woodrow and encourage you to ask questions once we're finished. I'm happy to answer questions. Ms. Woodrow?
Thank you, Judge Murphy. Council President Perez, council members, my name is Bonnie Woodrow, and I serve as your court services director. We'd like to thank you for the opportunity to showcase the services we provide in our division, as well as the accomplishments and goals of our department. Our budget starts on page 3-28 of the preliminary budget document. This is our org chart. There we are a department of 17 members, including 2 elected judges, myself, 1 probation officer, and 12 staff members that are divided between infraction and criminal case processing, and then our probation department, and we have 1 court security officer. Next slide, please. Thank you. Our budget is in 2 of the 6 city service areas listed. The probation department is listed under the safety and health, while the remainder of the staffing and expenses are listed under representative government. Our budget request is a baseline budget that contains no additional request for FTEs or additional expenses. And that request is for $3.1 million in 2021 and $3.2 million for 2022. Here is our department performance metrics. I would like to highlight a couple where we have obtained great results. The ability to access court record information related to criminal and infraction case processing is at 88 and 90% satisfaction. This is entirely due to Laserfish. We have been a paperless court for approximately 5 years. And with Laserfish, we are able to almost immediately respond to any records request by dragging and dropping case file documents into an email response. We're not hindered as much by redaction as the police department, so we respond the day we receive a request, generally speaking, unless it's a large request. Next slide, please. Filings. Court filings are at the heart of our court operation, and based on volume, court filings determine our staffing needs moving forward. Over the past 5 years, we've seen a dramatic increase in photo enforcement filings and hearings, as illustrated by this slide. The increase between 2017 and 2019 is about 102% for photo enforcement. For criminal and infraction, for that same time period, we saw a reduction of about 2%. Not included in this slide, hearings are also a major part of our daily operation. The court averages approximately 16,000 hearings a year, half of which are photo enforcement. Next slide, please, Jen. Although revenue collection is not an objective or goal of the court, it is imposed as a condition of sentence and used to offset the cost of prosecution or enforcement, and hopefully deters future bad acts. In 2019, the court received approximately $1.425 million in infraction, criminal, and parking revenue. In that same year, revenue from photo enforcement was approximately $3.932 million. Next slide, please. Our 2019-2020 accomplishments. As
Judge Kara Murphy-Richards alluded to previously, we moved the in-person hearing process to Zoom virtual platform within 2 weeks of the shutdown. And most of that is due to Laserfish, our digital document storage system, and our electronic documents system called OCourt. Another major accomplishment, and we are so thrilled to have an additional judge to address our caseload issues. Thank you, Kara. We have added additional staff due to increased photo enforcement caseload, developed an online public portal with interactive court forms, enhanced OCourt forms, and expanded Laserfish workflows for increased efficiency. We added additional attorney-client conference rooms for increased privacy during the negotiation process. Next slide, please. Thank you. Our 2021-2022 goals: improve the use of Zoom for virtual hearings process. Our customers are getting used to the virtual hearings process, so we are going to engage in a meaningful way, a way to have them attend the hearing via video rather than phone, and Judge can address those issues if there are any questions about that. Also, continued growth in the use of written results for meaningful budgets and recognizable results. Continue ongoing staff training, thank you to HR, to keep pace with changes in laws, ordinances, and court rules. Upgrade OCourt programs to enhance digital process for filing and hearing requests online. Expand online public portal with additional interactive forms and e-filing ability. And lastly, to address probation department staffing needs. We're a fairly large city with a probation department of 1. So we'll be discussing how we can address the needs of that department in the next couple of years. We also want to explore the community court benefits. There will be no fee increases considered this budget cycle. And with that, we would like to answer any questions that you have regarding our budget.
We have to get pictures.
We have to get pictures. Yeah.
Thank you both of you. Council members, do you have any questions regarding this presentation? I don't see any hands, but so you did a great job. Okay, I see a hand right now. Councilmember Van?
Yes, thank you, Council President, and thank you, Judge Murphy, and thank you, Bonnie, for your presentation. I very much just have a comment in regarding to your slide and in the slide regarding to justice and equality, and very much appreciate that new perspective and lens. So thank you so much for all you do.
Thank you, Councilmember Van. Any more questions? Well, I really want to appreciate all the work that you guys have been doing. I know how challenging, and I repeat the same, but it has been a very challenging year. And I know that course was one of those very tricky, departments that doing online was going to be very challenging. And I appreciate the voice of Councilmember Van bringing the importance of your department to make sure that we have the translation and the cultural awareness that is necessary to address all these issues at the court level. I know that you guys have been working very hard to make sure that our business plan is reflected on the court services, and I really appreciate that. So with that, thank you very much, and I'm going to move to the next item on the agenda.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. So, council members, this is the time for council deliberations and questions among us. And more than anything, this is the time that I would like you to bring any concerns on issues about these budget presentations, so the council, so the administration will be able to bring us proposals or recommendations next week. That is our final time during the CAO for deliberations. This was a long budget. But however, we have been able to present all of these departments in 3 weeks. So with that, I would like to see if any of you will like to raise your hand and give any comments or questions or concerns that you have regarding this budget. Councilmember Prince.
Thank you, Madam President. Not necessarily questions or concerns. I asked the question last week about the human services funding, and what I was looking for and didn't really feel like I got was where are we at and where are other people at, and they said we ranked maybe near the bottom, but I have no idea where the other people are at. Just so I can get a better idea of maybe where we can meet the mark better as far as human services funding. So need more of an apples to apples comparison of where other folks are. And I understand that we do other things and we have other programs. We can put that on the side, but just looking for a dollar for dollar analysis of where we are as far as human services funding.
That's great. Thank you, Councilmember Prince. Councilmember Ban.
Yes, yeah, not sure if we're gonna get an answer on this call or through email, but just on the same light, at Finance Committee today, I asked the question, and basically, what was presented to us was that we're at a 0.7% compared to other cities, and they're at a 1.4. I believe that's the number as far as for average for usage for human services. So, and in the last 8 years, as far as our budget, we haven't really increased for human services. And so that's kind of my concern, being a part of the community services committee, and then of course, human services, because there's huge need, and especially after COVID. And so I definitely would love to know the answer to Councilmember Prince's question, and that's so we can further, see and assess our community needs and the funds. So that's just a follow-up.
Thank you, Councilmember Ban. Anybody else? Okay. Council members, we have been receiving, and I'm very grateful that the community has been engaged this year a lot more than other budget cycles that I remember in our budget. And they have been asking us questions during public comments. And of course, because the format that we follow during our meetings, we don't engage in conversation back and forward. This is the time on the table. If you guys want to address any of the concerns that the community has brought to the council, do you have any of you have any comments regarding the request from our community? Okay, I hear none. Okay, Councilmember Ban. Sorry.
Well, I would just reiterate from last time, I think the question that had asked regarding the RISE program. So I think that's a need in our community that was commented at council many times. And so kind of, for us to consider programs such as RISE, and then of course, the human services aspect of the funding, right? And so those are just on my plate as far as concerns.
Sorry, I forgot to mute myself again. Thank you very much, Councilmember Ban. Councilmember Benedetti.
Yes, thank you. Let me lower my hand here. I would agree that I felt that having received the answer to Councilmember Prince's question about human services, I still don't feel that I understand fully what it is and why it is. And thank you, Councilmember Van, for sharing the information that you received in Finance Committee today. I think that's very helpful. And if there is capacity in any part of the budget to re-look and re-support some of these human services needs, particularly during this time, I think that would be a need. I also a few council meetings ago asked for the administration to take a look and see if there was the possibility of looking at an equity and empowerment commission, human commission, Equity and Empowerment Commission and look at its viability for this budget cycle. And while it might have been too late an ask to make it into this budget book, I'm wondering where it is that we might have capacity to take a look at that request, and if there is a particular department in which we might be able to see if that would fit under their work for the 21-22 cycle. So those are two things that I would like to see addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Benedetti. Councilmember Corman.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. So I appreciate the comments by my colleagues about human services and funding, and I agree. I'd like to see us doing more. I also, of all the years I've been serving, this is probably the most confusing time for trying to anticipate how much money we're actually going to have next year. I mean, it could be better than we hope. It could be worse than we're expecting. The other thing that's really unclear right now is just what's happening in the federal government. Possible rescue plans, more COVID funding, more stimulus, which I think really means that we will probably be looking at budget amendments, and I think it will make more sense than ever for us to consider it that way. So this is we're sort of sketching out a 2-year budget normally, and in a predictable time period, we could really nail down what that was going to look like. I think now we really can't. I'm going to say that in general, I feel like the department's kind of going to sort of just a base budget and trying to start with just the basics is probably the right way to go. But that we need to be open to finding any federal or state or county money that we can, and then combining it with if we need to provide some of our own seed money to get access to that money, we need to be ready to do it. So, and then of course we've added to our business plan some initiatives that we're all behind on equity and justice, and we do need to make sure those are adequately funded. I'm hoping we can use a lot of state and federal money to do that, and as we work through those, I hope that we can bring forward those. So I guess my point of view on this is that I think it's probably a pretty good effort by staff at this point, and I'm just expecting to be revisiting the budget because of the turbulent times we're in.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Corman. Councilmember O'Halloran.
Yes, thank you. I would like to echo everything that my colleagues have said, and I was going to say what Councilmember Corman said, which is, a budget is a plan, and then there's actuals, and so as we move through this, we will certainly take every opportunity, I hope, to revisit based on what's actually happening and how much revenue we do or do not have, and be able to find resources to fund some of this stuff. Obviously, baseline budget is really focused on keeping the lights on and keeping people employed, and that I think that's sort of our attitude going into 2021 right now. But to just keep our eyes and ears open for opportunities and be prepared to revisit the budget. So I'm just agreeing with everything everybody said. So.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Halloran. Councilmember Prince.
Thank you, Madam President. So I believe typically, and this wasn't the point I was going to make, but I'll make that point in a second. We always do a mid-buy budget adjustment since we've been doing biennial budgets. And so I expect for our mid-buy to happen next year, regardless of what's in this budget that was either presented to us or whatever we decide that we're going to adopt. But I think it's important that we, it's important that we have the discussion that we're having now, and look at all the items that could potentially be on the table. And Randy, you've been around a lot longer than me. But I don't remember ever having community come and make budget requests, demands, whatever, like we've had this year. And so I think at least getting a assessment of what is possible, what's not possible, to me is very important. The last thing I would want would be for the residents to think that folks come to us and they make their concerns known and we don't address it. With that, the thing that I'm interested in, and I've talked about it a bunch, is I'm really interested in what we do to increase our diverse contracting spend.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Prince. And I hear you what you're saying, and you're absolutely right, and I agree with you. Councilmember McKirby.
Thank you, Madam President. I would say Councilmember Prince said a lot of what I was thinking probably better than I can say it, so I'm not going to restate everything he said as far as not letting this moment kind of get away from us. Totally understanding and agreeing with the idea that we may have to look at the budget again down the line, but I think we can't kind of let some of the momentum that's happening this time just get away from us right now. So I would second the notion of having, whether it's retooling the Inclusion Task Force or creating a brand new Equity Empowerment Commission, whatever I think that body to help advise that work is going to be the cornerstone of a lot of what we do. That said, I also, brought forward, I was on the Human Services Advisory Committee before being on council. And I remember it being hard to spread the money around back then. And so if we haven't seen that much growth in that fund, and we've seen the needs grow exponentially, especially during COVID, I would certainly speak in favor of making sure that those who are the worst hit by this economy right now are the people that we're taking care of. And then the last notion I would say in terms of, I think Councilmember Corman raised a good point as far as going after, whether it be federal grants, state grants. The other area I'd like us to look would be public-private partnerships. So when it comes to the notion of the RISE fund or other areas we can invest in the community, it shouldn't be the city going at it alone. We should be able to partner like we did with the Doug Baldwin Community Center, with private entities, with the school district. We should be working on this stuff together. So those are my thoughts. I don't think we can do it all in one fell swoop, but I think we got to get it started.
Thank you, Councilmember McKibben, and I do value a lot your experience on the Human Service Committee, because that brings add value to this table. Anybody else has any comments right now? Well, if you indulge me, I took the liberty to write my notes because English is still my second language, so I just want to make sure that my ideas are very clear regarding this budget cycle. So first of all, I really want to appreciate the work of all the administrators in this very challenging year, and especially your department, Jan, to be able to put together this budget with all the challenges that we have faced these years. But I also want to thank the Renton community for their participation and for their comments. In the 6 years that I have been in the council, I really don't remember, as Councilmember Prince mentioned, the community been asking us and requesting for funding for specific issues. So I appreciate their voice, and I want to tell them that we see them, we hear them, and we feel them. So, I also want to thank them for sharing their concerns, and not just that, but their ideas of how can we improve and do better. I personally really appreciate your passion and your commitment to addressing inequities in our community and in our society. Our budget should be the reflection of our business plan, and addressing racial inequities has always been one of our top priorities. And although we may not have, as we just said right now, the financial ability to address all those issues at this time, I firmly believe that we should be ready to, as soon as the local, state, and federal funding is available, because I know firsthand that there are proposals on the table from different elected officials at the state and federal level to support ideas for racial equity. Specifically, I know that that Representative Jesse Johnson, if elected, he has several proposals for funding, as well as Congressman Joaquin Castro at that federal level. If this funding is, I think as a city we should be ready to with projects or programs in place to address inequities in our community when this fund comes to the table, and as well as support Black and Indigenous people of color in Renton. I will take a moment to address my stand regarding the 4 demands the community members made to this council, and I'm looking forward to hear recommendations from the administration during our council deliberations next week. First, something that you guys have brought to the table already, the equity, and I don't remember what is the other part. I call it equity and diversity commission, but the idea is there of what we need. I support the creation of a commission as an advisory board to the executive and the legislative branch pursuant the RCW 496040. But furthermore, I support the mayor's idea to create an office of racial inequity and inclusion when it's adequate, funding is adequate and available. I think the only city in King County that has an office of equity is Seattle. So I think it's the right path for the city of Renton to already have our own office on equity. The second demand that we have been hearing is to create an anti-racist budget. And if I hear correctly, if I hear you what you are saying, I think it's time to as soon as I said it, as soon as Representative Jesse Johnson at the state level, or if elected, or any other state legislator, bring legislation to bring more funding to cities, to have direct revenue to social services and basic needs. We should be explore where to add support, to some of the organizations that are already working to bring equity and racial justice to the region. Perhaps we can explore to add to our legislative priorities to support some of these efforts to bring more funding for these for human services and mental health, as the chief mentioned with Representative Orwell. About the rise, racial investment to secure equity. I will ask the administration if they can explore more about how we can, what is the work of the Community Inclusion American Dream Fund, and how can we bring their voice or something similar that we can participate, contribute, or support at city level. I'm not very familiar about. I have done a lot of research, but I'm not really familiar about what is the job that they do in this area, and specifically in Renton. So I will be interested to know more about that. And finally, the fourth demand has been deploying contracting of more people of color, specifically 50% of our population. I just hear what Ellen said, and I think the intent has been there, and to represent our community, but I would be more interested to do on what more we can do, not with our employees, but the contracts. And I think it's something that already Councilmember Prince brought to the table. And I want to hear more ideas about if we are reaching the communities and what is the best effort to reach community of colors and people who speak different language to be engaged in our employing fairs, or whatever you call them. I don't remember what is the right name. But anyway, this is my take. With that, I'm going to open the floor again because I see some hands that have been raised, and I think the first one was Councilmember Van.
Yes, thank you, Council President. Just so that we're on the same page, is the Equity and Empowerment Commission. But certainly I agree with all my colleagues, and just to reiterate that, yes, we have all these potential future funds, right? But certainly what can we do within our budget right now? Whether it's just to list the name and to think about it, because then we can be forward thinking rather than just be wishful, like, oh yeah, this person's going to get elected and they would do this. Let's look at the present time and what's happening right now, and what we have within our budget, and what we have created by taking control of our tax dollars that we passed recently, and doing a community needs assessment. And I would like that to be more of the conversation than it is of waiting for future funds. And certainly when we talk about perhaps a potential hybrid, if not, or a separate program from the Mayor's Inclusion Task Force or the Equity and Empowerment Commission, if that were to happen, if they're two separate things, I think that there should be some funding allocated to the Mayor's Inclusion Task Force, because all the work that sorry, I don't know where that came from. But certainly, with my experience being on the Mayor's Inclusion Task Force, and I respect Council Member McIrvin and his experience on the Human Services Committee, my experience on the Mayor's Inclusion Task Force when asked to connect bridging community with the city, when asking for $500 funding for a cultural event, we didn't have the funding, which to me, I thought that was very interesting of an answer. So I definitely want us to explore different options, whether it's with the Mayor's Inclusion Task Force, we need to pretty much put our money where our mouth is at. If we're talking about equity and inclusion, let's really support community members who are ambassadors in doing the work. And then if there is, the Equity and Empowerment Commission that really, go in details and do more work that are, whether we're diving into contracting, women, minority-owned business, so forth. I mean, that's a whole nother details. But I think really we need to look at it as more community-centered and what's currently on the table at this time, and obviously amending as needed.
Thank you, Councilmember Ban. Any other comments or questions? Okay, I don't see none. I just wanted to add that I forgot to mention that I also...
Madam President, I have a process question for you.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
What does next week look like? What is next week going to look like as far as...
Committee of the Whole?
Yeah, our final deliberations.
Yes, the idea is that the administrators will bring to the table ideas or recommendations based on the request that the council is asking right now. Let's see what they bring, and based on what they bring, we can ask more questions and deliberate in that moment. And if we need some changes or some additions, and if it's ready, we will go to the second, to the last public comments, and if it's ready, the adoption of the budget.
Perfect, thank you.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's perfect. I just wanted to get my mind wrapped around what it was going to look like next week.
Yeah, because right now I feel we are bringing a lot of things to the table right now. So I want to give the administration at least a week for them to bring back the recommendations. And I forgot to mention that I had it written here that we should also explore, and I think Councilmember McIrvin, you brought this last week about exploring the possibilities of the new affordable housing sales tax to be used also to support programs and projects regarding racial inequities. Councilmember McIrvin.
Well, yes, I can speak to that real quick. Certainly, I think we should investigate ways to use that, and that certainly can help, being that housing does contribute greatly to the wealth gap. I think there could be some possibilities, certainly, for those funds to be put there. The other thing I was going to suggest is, as it was brought up by a couple others about going after these other funds and resources, I do certainly want to make sure that, at least I'm expressing my view that while I think we should do that, we oftentimes like going after those, it's helpful to have a little bit of skin in the game. And so I want to make sure we're not going in completely without any local match going into that. I think that'll be important with any of those requests we'd be making from other entities. So I would like to see a proposal that has that at least gets us started, as I said. So just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
No, thank you. Great idea. Councilmember Benedetti.
Thank you. I wanted to speak to a couple of comments that had been made by other council members. I absolutely agree with Councilmember O'Halloran that a budget is a planning document. I also would like to share my perspective, which is that I believe it's a values document, and that certainly I agree that the values of keeping people employed and keeping the lights on and keeping our services going in as many different directions as we can and making progress on behalf of our residents is critical I feel, though, that we really do need to, between now and next week, if it's possible, to address some of these very specific issues. And I think that a placeholder, whether or not we have the opportunity to explore the idea of fully a placeholder to look in which budget an Equity and Empowerment Commission might live. And then also, I'm hoping that there can be, looking at the answers to our budget questions from last week and looking at the percentage of vendors that we work with who are, as described, minority disadvantaged or women-owned vendors, I feel that there is a tremendous amount of potential in this area. We have a lot of growth to do here. And so if there can be some specific action items that might relate to that work, I think that that would be very helpful as part of that plan. So, and I just hope that we can codify some of the conversation that we're having here and make sure that there is a place for it in the budget that we adopt. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Benedetti, and thank you for bringing back that voice to the table. That we need to remember that our budget is very constrained this year, but and basic services and again what Councilmember O'Halloran and Councilmember Corman had mentioned, this is not the end. This is not the end of the tunnel. This is just, for me, it's very important that at least we have it in the budget as a consideration when it's come to review. These are the priorities that we want to address on timely manner, but not looking right now, not missing the point that right now we have other priorities, which is keep providing the services that we are providing to our constituents. I think Councilmember O'Halloran, I saw your hand. Do you have a question?
Yes, ma'am. I was just going to make a comment on some of the other items that were added to our business plan with relationship to the budget document, and I just decided that I can save that for next year's retreat. So, thank you for that opportunity.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Halloran. Anybody else have more questions or comments? I was having a conversation, not about this, with another council member, and we were talking about. I was asking some questions, and another council member from another city. I'm sorry, not from this city, and I was asking more information about the rise and specifically the rise is the ratio in investment to secure equity, and I wanted to hear more about the Community Inclusive American Dream Fund. Jan, maybe we can ask the Renton Foundation if they are familiar with this fund or something similar, an organization that raise funds to address the inequities and help with the scholarships, homeownerships, and business from Black communities.
I can certainly follow up with them. They are more than willing to, on lots of issues, to partner with the city, as you've seen with Family First. So we can certainly have that conversation with them and find out what.
Madam President.
Councilmember O'Halloran.
Yes, so also with regard to the Renton Regional Community Foundation, Jan, I'm sure you, being on the board, I'm sure you guys have had conversations about impact investing, and with the example of the board of the foundation made a decision to establish a fund in support of COVID relief. And so that was a board decision. Nobody came to them and said, hey, I want to set up a fund for COVID relief. But the board established the fund, the public donated to the fund, and those funds were, I can't remember, but I think, Jan, $250,000 was raised and given back out to the community.
I think they raised right around 300,000, and it was right around $250,000 they've given out thus far.
Yeah, and so that's a board directed thing that we could do around RISE and inequities and communities of color. But I do want to don't want to get anybody's hopes up, because just like the city, the foundation is not allowed to write a check to an individual. So it's in support of services, and it's in support of organizations that provide services. But in terms of actually, for example, scholarships, they can't write a check to the student. They have to write a check to the school. So I wouldn't want to just get anybody's hopes up, but definitely have the conversation with Leanne Moss and the board, and see if maybe an impact investment opportunity is out there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember O'Halloran. For the members of the public that doesn't know, Councilmember O'Halloran was a long-time member. I don't remember how many years of the Renton Regional Foundation, and I appreciate your knowledge and bringing that to this table.
Thank you. 9 years, and Councilmember Benedetti is also on that board.
Oh, thank you, Councilmember Benedetti. And Jan as well. So we have a lot of people from that board in this table right now. Councilmember Corman.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Yeah, so I wanted to say that I really like this discussion, and I agree with the Equity and Empowerment Commission. You know, I like the idea of building that into this budget, or at least making sure we have a plan to go forward with that. I think you know, part of when our residents bring us requests, there's really two ways we can try and handle those. Sometimes if they're funding that we can do, if we have the money, we can fund those requests. But we also have a role amplifying those requests, or bringing them to those higher those higher organizations, the state or the county or the federal government. And anytime we get audience comment and somebody saying, we would like you to do this, I think it's, you know, we should remember that maybe they can't necessarily sort out the best funding source, but we should take it upon ourselves to see if we can help sort that out. And I think that needs to be a very, very serious part of our game plan this coming year, and a commission that could help us stay focused on that and work through those details would be great. So yeah, I just want to express support of the idea that's sort of gelling here, to have staff bring back some kind of proposal like that.
Thank you, Councilmember Corman, and thank you for expressing it better than me. That is exactly what I was looking for. We always have our legislative priorities every year, and they're, you know, from the state and from the federal, and I think we should be on the table, you know, supporting these ideas at every level, and reminding the different branches of government how important is this funding for everybody. Councilmember Ban.
Yes, thank you, Council President. I just wanted to reiterate that as we're deliberating and we're talking about community programs, that we do center it around community and community input and community voice. So, you know, I think it's great that we're reaching out to different institutions and foundations for their assistance. And of course, on our side is more of where is the funding, right? So, but definitely have community input through the process, and be intentional in that process as well. Because it's that is, you know, through the community, they know what's best and what's needed. So, thank you.
Councilmember Prince.
I'm sorry, Madam President. I have a lot of process questions today.
Yeah, please. And bring them, please, because you are more familiar with process than me. So maybe instead of questioning me, please tell me.
So when you were first talking about this, you were saying you wanted the administration to come back, and we've had people have talked about RISE, people have talked about the Equity and Empowerment Commission.
Yeah.
Is the expectation that the administration is going to come back next week with information on those items?
Yes.
Okay.
That's
so
my idea.
RISE and Equity Empowerment Commission and all that, they're going to come back next week with information on those.
Yes.
Perfect. That is what I needed to know.
Yeah. Jan, are we okay on that? Because I'm saying yes, and I want to hear from you, Jan Han.
Maybe I should just do a little bit of expectation management here. We can come back, we can brainstorm multiple options, maybe come up with some sort of list of things we can explore. But the reality is we won't have any of that fully vetted by next week, nor would we have time to rebuild a budget around that. So just so you're aware, much to Councilmember Corman's point earlier, we will be making some amendments over time to deal with what you decide to pursue or not pursue. So I
was just looking for options. I
Yes.
wasn't expecting you guys to come back with a fully baked cake.
Okay.
I mean, I think, and I've said this, I think in the 9 years I've been on council, bring us the ingredients and then we can make the cake.
Okay.
You know, or even bring us a partially baked cake. I don't care, but just bring us the information and then we can decide, you know, in our fiduciary responsibility where we want to go from there.
Madam President?
Yes, Councilmember Corman.
Yeah, so if maybe, and put another way to make sure I understand, I think, so we've all expressed interest in an equity and empowerment commission. I think it would be unfair for us to ask the administration to show us what that commission looks like. But what I think we're asking for is if it's going to require staff time to run, you know, commission, to invent that commission and then run that commission, let's go ahead and put that money for that staff time into the budget, if we can. I think something like that.
I agree, Councilmember Corman. For me, it's like what we can do, and what we cannot do is like holding a place for what we are going to be able to do in the future. But put it out there that these are some of our priorities that we care about. So I think we're all saying the same thing, but in different ways.
Yeah. And if I may, sorry.
Okay. Sorry.
It's okay, I will say that Councilmember Corman, Councilmember Priest, and then Councilmember Benedetti.
Okay. So I just wanted to add on one more clarifier that I would be okay with. So if we decided it was going to take a staff person, say 50% of their time to help us devise this commission and then to facilitate it and make it successful, that I could see us putting the money into the budget to make that happen. Understanding that commission may find hundreds of thousands of dollars or even millions of dollars of need through the year, and then we would then respond to that by looking for budget amendments and looking for matching grants and so forth. So I wouldn't want people to get the idea that because we were putting in, say, $50,000 in the budget for this, that's as far as we were going to go. That would just be our commitment to continue the momentum and keep it rolling and come up with a structure. With going back to my first comment, that we would then look to capturing as much money as we can everywhere we can get it, even right here in Renton, but elsewhere. So, anyways, that's my thought on that. No,
Thank
be
you,
quiet.
Councilmember Corman.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember Prince.
Thank you, Madam President. And so I will say, just going backwards a little bit, when we come back to next week and we're deliberating and we're back to talking about the human services budget, and what the human services looks like. So I know I feel like we should have a higher level of vetting than we will for the things that we've received from the community, because those dollars are those dollars. And so we should have a general idea of being able to look at apples to apples and see what's what. So I understand for the issues that the community brought to us, that there's not a extreme level of vetting, but I think for the human services initiative or the human services dollars, we should have a general better idea of what things look like.
Yeah, just for clarification, Councilmember Prince, when we talk about the human service, we know that the money allocated for the human services, we always receive the recommendation from the Human Service Commission, which is actually the venting and the voice of the community in that table. What we are looking forward to add to the human service, budget is not just, it's a strong focus, I will say, on adding the anti-racism organizations, and specifically also organizations that work with Black communities to bring equity to our society. Am I correct on that?
You are correct, and I think I think what the Human Services Advisory Committee does is phenomenal. More of what I'm looking at is, like we did with the Arts Commission, I think last budget, is there any room to carve off a larger slice of the pie for them? 2 years ago, historically, the Arts Commission was well underfunded. And then we came in and we rectified that wrong in the budget. And so I'm saying with the human services dollars, if we are indeed low, and I need to see the data to be able to recognize if that's true or not, if we can find room to maybe not get us exactly where we want to be, because this is obviously where we don't know what things are going to look like. But if we can make a good faith effort to do something so that it's not where it is, and it's not where it's been for the last 8 years.
Yeah, thank you. Councilmember Benedetti.
Thank you. And Jan, to your point on the what level of information would be helpful, I think to my mind, knowing where it is in the work plan. So we have goals, 21, 22 goals for different departments, and I think it would be helpful to know that if we're going to be doing something in one of these areas, who is it that is going to be doing the doing, and maybe bring options in that, and taking a look at the both at the appropriateness in terms of their work and also capacity. I think that would be something so that we can codify it as a goal, whatever it is. And yes, I don't think anyone's expecting that there's going to be, as Councilmember Prince says, a fully baked cake. It's just knowing who the baker is supposed to be that would be really, who's going to be doing that work, I think would be very helpful going into this, so it makes it even at the goal level. Thank you.
Councilmember McKeown.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm not even going to go. I love the baking analogies, but I'm not even going to try to do that because I'm just going to. It comes out bad every time I try to put something in the oven. Anyway, the question I have is also a process question, and just looking at our timeline, and Jan, I totally, the expectation should be that it's not going to be. We're not going to get everything figured out before we need to adopt a budget. But as Councilmember Prince said, maybe there's some stuff we can do. Do we need to be willing to set back our schedule a little bit, or would we keep it moving forward and then do amendments? I don't want to take us down to the 11th hour, but how much time do we have to work on this?
I think we're going to have to pretty much stay on track with the dates that we set up, because we do have to get that property tax levy to King County. So more likely than not, it will be amendments down the road once you decide what kind of cake you want.
Thanks.
Thank you both. Any more comments or concerns or suggestions? Okay, I hear none. So we will come back, Jan, next week if you have anything to add right now this time. If not, next week, during the cow week, we'll come back with to hear what you guys have to say, and if we have more questions, bring them to the table as well.
Sounds good.
That sounds good. Okay. So thank you very much, everybody, and this meeting is adjourned.